The rain fell in relentless sheets, turning the city's streets into a maze of rushing water and shadowed corners. Beneath the old stone bridge, Megan huddled under her threadbare coat, trying to keep warm as the wind howled through the cracks in the concrete. She had been here for weeks now, moving from one forgotten corner of the city to another, never staying in one place too long. It wasn't safe. People didn't trust someone like her, someone without a home, without a job, without a family. Tonight, though, something felt different. The air was thick with more than just rain. It was heavy, as if the night held a secret just waiting to be uncovered. As Megan pulled the coat tighter around her, she heard a sound, a faint, desperate cry that barely rose above the storm's roar. She stiffened. It wasn't the usual murmur of the city. No, this was something else. Someone was in trouble. For a moment, she hesitated. In her world, getting involved meant risking everything. But the cry came again, weaker this time, and her feet were already moving before she made a conscious decision. She splashed through the flooded alley, her heart racing, until she saw him, a small boy, lying face down near the edge of the swollen river. Megan didn't think. She acted. She dropped to her knees beside the boy, flipping him over and pressing her fingers against his neck. There was a pulse, but it was faint. "Hold on," she whispered, barely able to hear her own voice over the storm. Her hands shook as she performed CPR, her breath quick and shallow from panic. When his chest finally rose with a shaky gasp, Megan felt a rush of relief so powerful it made her dizzy. She gathered the boy into her arms, struggling to her feet. "We need help," she muttered, looking around. But the streets were deserted, the rain masking any sign of life. She would have to do this alone. Megan stumbled toward the main road, every step a fight against the storm. When she reached the hospital's bright lights, she was soaked to the bone, but she didn't stop. Nurses rushed out as soon as they saw her, taking the boy from her arms, but Megan didn't wait to see what would happen next. She turned away before they could ask any questions, disappearing into the night. In the hospital, Liam's parents, Carla and Peter, arrived in a flurry of panic when they got the call. Their son had been found unconscious in the storm, saved by a woman who had vanished without a trace. They bombarded the nurses with questions, desperate for answers. Who had saved their son? Where was she? But no one knew anything about the mysterious woman who had disappeared as quickly as she had appeared. They sat by Liam's bedside for hours, watching as his small chest rose and fell with the rhythm of the ventilator. The doctors assured them that he would recover, but the question remained: who was the woman who had saved his life? Carla couldn't let it go. There was something about the situation that gnawed at her. A woman, alone in the storm, saving her son's life only to vanish into the night? It didn't make sense. She had to find her, to thank her, to understand. The next morning, Carla began her search. She visited the hospital staff, asking for any details, but it was as if the woman had been a ghost. No one had gotten a good look at her. No one knew where she had come from. But Carla was determined. This woman had saved her son. She needed to know more. A few days later, after speaking to some locals near the hospital, she learned of a homeless woman who had been seen nearby that night. A woman who matched the vague description the nurses had given. Could it be her? Carla wondered, her heart racing. Without hesitation, she drove to the area where the woman had last been seen. Carla found Megan sitting under the same bridge, staring blankly at the water. Her clothes were still damp, and her face was pale with exhaustion. When Carla approached her, Megan looked up, her eyes filled with surprise and confusion. "Are you the one who saved my son?" Carla asked, her voice trembling. Megan hesitated. I didn't do it for any reward," she said quietly, looking away. "I just couldn't leave him there." Tears filled Carla's eyes. "You saved his life," she whispered. "I don't know how to thank you." Megan stood, pulling her coat tighter around her shoulders. "You don't need to. I was just doing what anyone would have done." But Carla wasn't ready to let her go. "Please," she said, reaching out. "At least let me help you. You don't have to live like this." Megan shook her head, a small, sad smile on her lips. "You don't understand," she said softly. "I've been living like this for a long time." Carla couldn't shake the image of Megan from her mind, the hollow look in her eyes, the way she spoke as if she had given up on herself entirely. How could a woman like her, someone who had risked her life to save a child, be so resigned to such a harsh existence? There was something deeper there, something Carla couldn't yet understand. As Carla stood at the window of her son's hospital room, watching the rain trickle down the glass, her thoughts kept returning to Megan's words. "You don't understand. I've been living like this for a long time." It felt like an unspoken challenge, a plea disguised as indifference. Carla spent the next few days visiting the area where Megan had been staying. Each time she came back, she tried to offer help, but Megan always declined, stubbornly clinging to her independence. Despite the refusal, Carla couldn't walk away. She didn't just feel grateful to Megan, she felt responsible. But Megan made it clear, time and again, that she didn't want charity. "Megan, you saved my son. You could have walked away, but you didn't." Carla stood in front of Megan's makeshift shelter one evening, the last glimmers of daylight casting long shadows. "I know you don't want my help, but I can't just pretend that none of this happened. You deserve more than this." Megan's lips tightened into a thin line. She stared at the ground, her voice low and controlled. "You don't know what I deserve." The conversation seemed like it was going nowhere. Carla sighed, running a hand through her hair. "If you don't want anything from me, at least let me offer you a roof over your head, just for a little while. I won't push you for anything else." Megan glanced up, her dark eyes unreadable. For a moment, Carla thought she might refuse again. But then, Megan nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just for a little while." The next day, Megan found herself standing awkwardly in the guest house behind Carla's home. It was a modest space, clean and warm, worlds away from the cold streets she had called home for so long. But the warmth didn't ease the unease she felt creeping up her spine. Megan wasn't used to this, people offering her help, showing her kindness. It made her uncomfortable. She didn't trust it. Carla was patient, though, sensing Megan's discomfort. She never pushed, never asked too many questions, but curiosity flickered in her eyes every time they crossed paths. Megan could feel it, the weight of questions unasked, secrets waiting to be uncovered. Days turned into weeks, and despite Megan's resistance, she found herself settling into a routine. Carla brought her food, offered her small comforts, but never intruded. Megan spent most of her time alone, watching the world through the windows of the guest house, wondering how long this fragile peace would last. One evening, Carla knocked softly on the door, a hesitant smile on her face. "I was thinking," she began, stepping inside. "I've noticed you and Liam have been getting along well. He keeps asking about you, wants to know more about the woman who saved him." Megan tensed. She had spent a little time with Liam, but she tried to keep her distance. The boy was curious, always asking questions, always eager to talk. But each conversation left her feeling uneasy. There was something about him, something familiar. "He's a good kid," Megan said quietly, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "You've raised him well." Carla sat down across from her, eyes searching Megan's face. "There's more to this, isn't there? I can tell something's been bothering you. Please, if there's anything I should know." Megan's heart raced. She had been trying to ignore it, but the truth was clawing its way to the surface. She had noticed the birthmark on Liam's shoulder, a small, crescent-shaped mark that matched the one her own child had. The child she had given up for adoption all those years ago, the one she had spent her whole life trying to forget. She clenched her fists, fighting back the surge of emotions. I don't know what you mean," Megan muttered, her voice shaky. Carla leaned forward, concern etched on her face. "Megan, I don't want to pry, but you're different around Liam. It's almost like you know him." Megan swallowed hard, her chest tightening. How could she know? The questions kept swirling in her mind, but she had no answers. Not yet. A few nights later, Megan was alone in the guest house when her phone buzzed with a message from Carla. "Megan, Liam's been asking for you again. He wants to know if you'll come to his birthday party tomorrow. Please, say yes." Megan stared at the message, her fingers trembling. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, memories of the baby she had left behind, the years of guilt and regret. Could Liam really be her son? Part of her wanted to run, to leave before the truth caught up with her. But another part, the part that had saved Liam that stormy night, couldn't stay away. She had to know. She had to find out if this boy was the child she had lost so long ago. At the party, Megan watched from the sidelines as Liam laughed and played with the other children, his joy infectious. But she couldn't relax. Every time she looked at him, the weight of the possibility pressed down on her. Is this him? The thought had been tormenting her for days now. Suddenly, Liam ran over to her, his eyes bright with excitement. "Megan! Megan, look what I got!" He showed her a new toy, beaming up at her. "You're coming to the cake, right?" Megan smiled weakly, her heart aching. "Of course," she whispered. But even as she smiled, her mind raced. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, Carla approached her. The tension between them had grown thick in the air. "Megan, I've been thinking," Carla began, her voice soft but firm. "There's something I need to tell you." Megan's pulse quickened. Does she know? Before Carla could continue, the door to the guest house creaked open, and Liam stood there, his small face serious. "I heard you talking," he said quietly. "Is something wrong?" Both women froze, their hearts hammering in their chests. The air in the room grew still, tension tightening like a rope about to snap. Megan stood frozen, her heart pounding so loudly in her chest that she was sure Carla and Liam could hear it. Is this the moment? She thought, eyes locked on Liam's innocent face. Everything inside her screamed to run, to escape before the truth destroyed everything. But there was no more running. The secret she had carried for years now weighed too heavily. Carla's hand trembled slightly as she reached for Megan, her voice low and gentle. "Megan, I think it's time we talked. Really talked." Megan knew what she meant. This wasn't just about the strange bond she had formed with Liam over the last few weeks. It was about something deeper. She could see it in Carla's eyes. There was suspicion, but also compassion, maybe even fear. Carla was close to discovering the truth, if she hadn't already. Liam's small voice cut through the silence. "Mom, what's going on? Why are you both so upset?" He looked between the two women, clearly sensing the tension. Carla bent down to her son, brushing his cheek with a tender hand. "It's nothing to worry about, sweetie. Why don't you go play for a bit? Megan and I need to talk." But Liam didn't budge. He stood his ground, his eyes wide and questioning. "Is it about me?" he asked softly. "Why do you always look sad when I'm around, Megan?" Megan's heart broke at the boy's words. He had noticed, of course. Children always did. She had tried to hide her pain, to push away the flood of emotions that surfaced every time she saw him, but it was no use. The boy was smart, too smart to be kept in the dark any longer. Tears welled up in Megan's eyes as she knelt down to face him. "Liam," she whispered, her voice barely steady. "There's something I need to tell you. It's about your past." Liam's brow furrowed in confusion, and Carla's breath caught in her throat. The air seemed to hum with anticipation, as if the very walls were holding their breath. That night, Megan couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed every moment of the last few weeks, how she had noticed the birthmark on Liam's shoulder, the way he smiled, the way he talked. It was all so familiar, like watching a ghost from her past come to life. But the fear of disrupting his life, of tearing his world apart, had kept her silent. Now, though, there was no turning back. Carla's voice broke through her thoughts. "Megan," she whispered from the doorway of the guest house, "I found something." Megan turned slowly, her pulse quickening. Carla stepped forward, holding a small piece of paper. It was crumpled and worn, like something that had been hidden away for years. This was in Liam's adoption file. I never really thought much of it until now. Megan stared at the paper, her breath catching in her throat. She knew what it was before Carla even said the words. Carla unfolded the paper with shaking hands, revealing an old hospital record, a record that listed Liam's biological mother. Megan's name was there, clear as day. Carla's voice trembled as she spoke. "I didn't know, Megan. I had no idea." Megan felt the world spin around her, her knees threatening to give way. She had suspected, but seeing it in writing, seeing the undeniable proof of her connection to Liam, it was almost too much to bear. She stumbled back, her hands clutching her chest as if to hold herself together. Carla's eyes were wide with shock, but there was no anger, only a deep, aching sadness. "You're his mother," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You're Liam's birth mother." The room seemed to collapse in on itself as the weight of the revelation hit them both. Megan couldn't breathe. "This is it. This is the truth I've been hiding from for so long."
Hey there, quick message. Grab a paper, write down HeroKind Stories, our channel name. Come back soon, we've got incredible stories you won't want to miss.
Liam, who had been listening quietly from the hallway, stepped into the room. He was pale, his hands shaking as he looked from Carla to Megan, trying to understand. "Mom? Megan?" His voice wavered with confusion, but there was also a sense of knowing. He had heard enough. Megan fell to her knees, her tears falling freely now. "I didn't know," she sobbed, her voice raw with emotion. "I gave you up when you were a baby. I thought it was the right thing. I didn't think I'd ever see you again." Carla moved to Liam, wrapping her arms around him protectively. "Sweetie, I know this is a lot to take in, but Megan is the woman who gave birth to you." Liam looked at Megan, his young face a mixture of shock, confusion, and something else, something Megan couldn't quite place. For a long, painful moment, no one spoke. The silence was thick with unspoken words, unshed tears. Finally, Liam's small voice broke through. "Does that mean you're my real mom?" The question hung in the air like a sharp knife, cutting deep into Megan's heart. She nodded slowly, her voice trembling. "Yes, Liam, I'm your birth mother. But Carla's the one who's raised you, who's loved you all these years." Liam took a step forward, his eyes locked on Megan's tear-streaked face. He was trying to process it all, trying to understand how the woman who had saved him in the storm was also the mother who had given him away. "I don't know what to say," he whispered, his voice small and fragile. Megan reached out a trembling hand, but stopped short, afraid to push him away, afraid to hurt him any more than she already had. "You don't have to say anything," she whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted you to be safe." Carla, tears in her own eyes, stepped closer, pulling Liam into her arms. "We're still your family, Liam," she said softly. "Nothing will change that." The room was steeped in silence after the revelation, each heartbeat heavy with the weight of the truth. Liam stood between Carla and Megan, his young face marked with confusion and uncertainty, trying to process everything. The tension was thick, but there was also a quiet understanding, an unspoken agreement that their world had shifted, and there was no going back. For Megan, the moment she had dreaded for years had arrived. She had always feared what would happen if she found the child she gave up. Would he hate her? Would he be angry that she abandoned him? And now, the fear of those answers was staring her in the face. She swallowed hard, wiping the tears from her cheeks as she spoke in a shaky voice. "Liam," she began slowly, "I gave you up because I thought it was the best thing I could do for you. I wasn't in a place where I could take care of you. I didn't know if I'd ever see you again, but I knew I wanted you to have a better life. And Carla, she gave you that." Liam looked up at her, his eyes wide and searching, trying to understand the words. "So, you didn't want me?" His voice trembled with hurt, the innocence in his words cutting deeper than any accusation. Megan's heart broke at the question. "No, Liam, I always wanted you," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "But I couldn't give you the life you deserved. I thought I was doing the right thing, even though it hurt so much." Carla placed a comforting hand on Liam's shoulder. "Liam, what Megan is trying to say is that sometimes grown-ups have to make really hard choices. She didn't give you up because she didn't love you. She gave you up because she did love you." Liam stood in silence for a long moment, his small hands clenching at his sides. Then slowly, he looked at Megan again, his young mind wrestling with the storm of emotions swirling inside him. "But why did you save me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why now?" Megan knelt down so that she was at eye level with him, her heart in her throat. "Because, Liam, I couldn't let anything happen to you. Even though I didn't know who you were at first, I couldn't just walk away. And when I found out, I couldn't let you go again. Not this time." Liam's face softened, the confusion still lingering, but there was something else there now, something more like understanding. He didn't fully grasp the complexity of the situation, but deep down, he knew that Megan had never stopped caring. Slowly, he stepped closer to her, wrapping his small arms around her neck in a tentative embrace. Megan's breath caught in her throat as she held him, her tears falling freely now. It was a moment she had never dared to hope for, a moment of redemption she wasn't sure she deserved. But it was real. Liam was real, and for the first time in years, the unbearable weight of guilt lifted, just a little. Over the next few days, things began to settle into a fragile routine. Megan stayed in the guest house, growing closer to Liam, though it was clear that their relationship would take time. He still called Carla Mom, and Megan never tried to change that. She knew that Carla had earned that title in ways she never could. But slowly, Megan found her place in his life, someone who had been lost but was now found. Carla, too, had her own process of adjustment. Though the revelation of Megan being Liam's birth mother had shaken her deeply, she never let that change the way she loved her son. If anything, it made her appreciate the life they had built together even more. She made room for Megan, recognizing that Liam's history was a part of him, a part that needed to be embraced rather than feared. One evening, as the sun set over the city and the soft glow of twilight filled the guest house, Carla knocked on Megan's door. "Mind if I come in?" she asked gently. Megan, who had been sitting by the window, nodded. "Of course." Carla stepped inside, her face calm but thoughtful. She sat down across from Megan, the weight of everything that had happened still heavy between them. "I've been thinking a lot about what all of this means," Carla began, her voice soft, "and I realized you didn't just save Liam that night. You saved all of us." Megan looked at her, surprised. "I don't know about that," she said quietly. "No, you did," Carla insisted. "You brought something into our lives that we didn't even know we were missing. Liam needed to know where he came from. And you needed to be part of that. I don't think I really understood it until now, but you're a part of this family, Megan, in your own way." Megan blinked back tears, too overwhelmed to speak. Family. She had spent so long thinking she didn't deserve one, that she had lost her chance at happiness. But here, in this small moment, Carla had offered her something she had thought was lost forever, a place to belong. As weeks passed, Megan continued to build her relationship with Liam, though she never tried to replace Carla. There was an unspoken understanding between them that Carla would always be his mother. But Megan was there too, in a different way. Someone who had come from the shadows but had found a way back into the light. One afternoon, as Megan and Liam played a board game in the living room, Liam looked up at her with a small, thoughtful smile. "You know, you can call me son if you want," he said, his voice shy but sincere. Megan's heart swelled, her eyes brimming with tears. She smiled softly at him, reaching out to brush a curl from his forehead. "And you can call me Mom if you want," she whispered. Liam nodded, a small, knowing smile on his face. "I think I'd like that." In the end, the truth hadn't destroyed them. It had brought them closer in ways none of them had expected. Megan's return had been painful, filled with uncertainty, but it had also brought healing, a kind of healing that none of them had known they needed. As the story drew to a close, Megan looked out the window at the setting sun, the warm glow of twilight casting long shadows on the ground. She had found her way home, in the most unexpected of ways, and for the first time in years, she felt at peace. Thank you for being with us for this journey. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share it with others who may need to hear it. And if you want to see more inspiring tales, check out the next video. You won't want to miss it. Click now to watch.